generally having to tell people how cognac is made. Like, hey, let's start with it's made from grapes. And that sometimes is just mind-blowing to people.
Welcome to PreBatch. Today we're speaking with Jordan Bushell, the global brand ambassador for Hennessy. Today we speak about the progression of cocktail competitions and the role of being a brand ambassador. Reality and perception of age statements on bottles, the role terroir plays in cognac production, cognac versus Armagnac and other brandies, and why we don't see too many cognac vintages. Drinks on the menu today are the honey highball, between the sheets, and the maple old fashioned. Jordan, welcome.
Gavin, thanks.
So yeah, you're the global ambassador for Hennessy, as I know, and maybe some other people know. But tell us a little bit about how you got into bartending, your career start.
My career start was, I think, like many people in this industry, there was no intention to have a career. There was not even an intention for me to have a job in this industry. I was, a friend of mine wanted to take a bartending course, and it was this minor school, just like a one-off location in Toronto, and it happened to be the summer months, so I think they were doing some sort of special where it was like half price, and so it was like 4 Fridays in a row, and he was like, I want somebody to take it with me, and we'll go in together. And there was one of the days, he convinced me to do it because one of those days they played with real alcohol, not just colored water, because you had to learn to like layer shots and drinks and things like that. And it's like, so you got to drink them all. And I was like, $200, drink for free. Interesting. And at the very least, I thought, well, I'm just going to make drinking at bars more interesting because I'll know what I like and I can order. He never ended up bartending a day in his life, to my knowledge. And a couple months later, after I'd finished the classes, my mother, who is somebody that believes all education, you should use some education. She's like, you're not doing anything during the evenings. Like, why don't you go use that bartending course you took? And I thought, okay, yeah, interesting. So I started serving. It's the only serving job I've ever had because the one bar that hired me had a ton of bartenders, like real veteran pro guys.
Okay, so you're on the floor. In my terms, you're on the floor.
Yeah, so I started on the floor.
Yeah, okay.
And then the very next, couple, I think 6 months went by, and then I started bartending at a different location. Same old story as most, like you fall in love with it. Like I fell in love with the people. Like I loved seeing new people come into the bar from various different places, around the world. That first bar I worked in was near a hotel that was like frequented by business travelers. So you had a lot of people that were coming in solo, or ones and twos or anyway. And that just became interesting to me. And then you fall in love with the craft over that time. People order different things. You start to question the bottles behind the bar and everything. And you get enough interesting general managers, bar managers, everybody teaches you something. And I was quickly in love with the craft and moved my way around to many different areas. I ended up bartending in Dublin for like 6 months. I came back to Toronto, blanketed the city in resumes, and then started working at nightclubs after that. And like fell in love with the speed bartending that nightclubs brought to the table. And like, you're the center of the party. And that was fun. I was making great money, working on weekends, going through university and college. And then I got out. My degree was in a film production, film and television production degree. Got out and realized very quickly I didn't really I like the romance of making film, but not the practical day-to-day work that I ended up doing for it. Yeah. And I was having so much fun on the weekends at the club that I kind of left my day job and went full-time into bartending without really... My initial thoughts was, what do I need to go back to school for? What would better suit me? And then while I was bartending, I just kind of came to the realization that like this was me now. And I didn't know where it was going at the time because this was 23 years ago.
How old would you have been 3 years ago?
Like 20, 21
Yeah.
is around the time I sort of realized this was going to be a significant part of my future. It's probably 23 that I went all in on that.
Yeah.
Started bartending at 18, and I didn't know, like my thought then was, I guess I'm going to own a pub one day, maybe.
Yeah.
And around that time, maybe around the age of 25, cocktails started to become a bigger deal in Toronto. I know it was already like Dale DeGroff and Dick Bradsell in like Dale DeGroff in New York, Dick Bradsell in London were already kind of like building those scenes, but realistically, the internet wasn't the powerhouse it is today then. So it's like we were kind of hearing about stuff in Toronto, but it's like the access to knowledge, we're kind of coming up with it on our own. And though I was still very much a nightclub bartender, I was playing around on my own with like different cocktails and mostly classics and stronger drinks and things like that. But I was entering these cocktail competitions and I was like the club guy that was actually doing pretty well in them. And then I ended up leaving the club because I thought like it's a lot of fun and I'm making a lot of money because, you know, Canada's largely a tip-based system.
Yeah.
But I realized that I wanted to get deeper into hospitality and like the ability to, you know, have a back bar of different whiskeys and rums and different things we could pick from, different cocktails we could make. So that, you know, I went deeper into cocktail competitions. I went deeper into that hospitality from that side and the drink offerings that I could get for people. And that really started to shape the direction I was going. I was getting offered positions based on the knowledge I had. And because I had some management experience from the club, being their head bartender, which they sort of treated as like the bar manager, that was a rarity at the time. Like somebody that can make drinks and knew how to manage, that was, you know, a unicorn at the time in Toronto.
It's still rare.
Yeah. So I got offered a lot of opportunities in that case to like open new venues and, you know, I was getting calls, you know, very flatteringly saying, hey, I hear you're the person we need to open our spot because no one wanted to pay for, you know, a quote unquote mixologist or head bartender and a bar manager. So having somebody that was the bar manager, could do inventory, could do hiring and training, but also could make your cocktail list and work your bar, that was a value add for a lot of owners. And that put me in positions that allowed me to grow my center of knowledge and grow, you know, the path I had going forward and put me in a lot of spotlight to brands, which then further accelerates that by you getting invited to different things or invited to even just compete in different cocktail competitions, like you finding out about them ahead of time. Was a great thing. And that eventually led me to Hennessy because I was running a venue in Toronto that was a really good MH account because we had a back room, a private room that was used for like big dining, but on the weekends, it would be a nightclub at Friday and Saturday night, whereas the front lounge was still very much cocktail focused. And there was a restaurant and a huge patio as well. So we were a great account for them because we were doing cocktails, but we were doing cocktails at volume, like 1,000 people a night, getting a properly made Cosmo, getting a shrub, like this was 17 years ago, we had two vinegar cocktails on a menu 17 years ago.
That's wild, man. Like, so what was the scene like in Toronto? This is like, I was thinking while you're speaking about that, because 17 years ago, I think I don't know where it was, but probably in Australia, but like small cities, like anywhere outside of New York and London, my experience 17 years ago or 20 years ago, the cocktail scene was pretty trash.
Well, yeah, I would say that there was...
By today's standards.
I think like we had a number of people, we probably had 8 to 10 bartenders that, you know, it was the same 8 to 10 of us at every cocktail competition. Yeah. Like it always ended up with the 8 to 10 of us in the finals. And everyone, you could tell what everyone was doing or what they were reading or into when like they had the same style for like 6 months. It's like at one point I think I was known as the vinegar bartender because I got really into shrubs. Yeah. So like every competition I was like, I could do a shrub for this. But we had a pretty good level because Toronto being a very multicultural city, we're very close to New York in proximity, that we were getting some spillover and some influence, and we were, the biggest market in Canada, so that anytime any ambassador came from anywhere, they were going to come to Toronto. And so we learned in little pieces like that as we went, and we had easier access to, Manhattan Cocktail Week or Tales of the Cocktail is not like as big a deal as like flying from Australia to Tales would have been a huge endeavor at the time. So we were getting some of it, and I think we were doing things at a big level, but only at like 8 bars. We also had somebody that didn't really take a major role in Toronto, but like certainly put spotlight on bars in general, which was a bar open called Bar Chef, and they were doing like really molecular cocktails. And so it was, we've had bars that were collecting attention for a long time, and I think that helped. And so when I was the opening bar manager of Brasai, which was on King West, which is a really big nightlife street in Toronto. A lot of nightclubs at the time. Some restaurants were opening on the street, but Brasai was like 1,000 people a night that got introduced to really good cocktails. Wow. And that really helped shape part of the scene there, where you had cocktail bars happening, but they were in the small, dark fringes of the restaurant bar scene. And all of a sudden now you had the busiest street probably in Canada for bars, with the newest bar opening that was doing cocktails. And, as I said, 17 years ago, there were 2 vinegar cocktails on a menu. It was like shocking to people.
Yeah, for sure.
And so every member of the opening bar team of Brasai went on to become an ambassador. Yeah. The entire male bartending team of the circular bar, because we had a lot of, I say male because it just happened to be 4 guys that wanted to focus on cocktails, because every great female bartender I knew was far more willing to work in nightclubs and spend only 3 hours working and make $700 versus you're going to make $300 doing triple the amount of work. They were like, no, Jordan, I want no part of that. So they all worked in the back room at Brasai and, made their money that way. But it was, all of the bartenders went on to become ambassadors. And that's not necessarily a sign of success, but to us, it was a sign that they were taken seriously in their careers, and they're still involved in the bar industry in that way. Yeah,
and back then, ambassador was a reasonably new role, right? Like, I think, as far as I remember it, ambassadors really didn't used to be called ambassadors. They were reps, and now I delineate the two. A rep is much more local and he's trying to sell you something, whereas an ambassador is much more top layer of the funnel, that they're just promoting the product. You're not out selling Hennessy to people. You're just like, hey, I promote the brand, but I haven't got a case of Hennessy in the back of my car that you can buy off me right now. That's like,
I think there's the ambassador role. Yeah, certainly it means like the title itself means everything and nothing at the same time. Yeah, but back then, you almost had to make the distinction that you came from the bar industry as an ambassador, because most of the time or not most of the time, but like a lot of the time it could have come from like the marketing department or the sales department. And it was just somebody that wanted to talk more about the spirit than everybody else did. But yeah, their goal might've been to sell you at the end of the day. But then the ambassador role really started to distinguish itself and become more about education. In fact, when I first went to work for Hennessy, I was the U.S. national ambassador, but they didn't originally call me that. I still have my original business card, and it said media and trade specialist, because in the U.S. they called every sort of sampling model a brand ambassador. So to not have confusion between the people that were handing out, free samples of some cocktail at a nightclub somewhere, and me, they called me a trade and media specialist. Now, let me ask you, What do you think a trade and media specialist does?
I have no idea, but you've got a film background, so maybe that's...
But exactly, you have no idea. So it made me have to have so many more conversations to be like, I'm the brand ambassador.
Yeah, it's almost an oxymoron, right? Because you're saying trade and media specialist. Well, like if you specialize in either of those, you don't specialize in the other, because trade and media are completely different things.
But they were using me as both PR, because at the time, if you had a cocktail that was, based on, I don't know, Lunar New Year or the holidays or Halloween, if you had a themed cocktail to give to any media agency, they were lapping that up. That was like, oh, perfect. This is how we can advertise your brand, but we need this. Or like, you're going to go on like Good Morning America and like, if you're entertaining this holiday, here are the 4 cocktails you need in your repertoire. Like, that was easy press. So I was used for PR.
Yeah.
But then 95% of my role was educating trade.
Yeah.
But the visual side of it was go on Fox and Friends and talk about
That's
Christmas cocktails.
The media specialist part. The trade could mean anything. I mean, trade is just like, you could just have a forklift license, and they're like, yeah, well, the guy can put a pallet on a lorry, and it's all good. Like,
my wife loved it at the time because like the ambiguousness of that title meant she could do anything with it. She was like, oh yeah. She was in PR, so she realized the value in an ambiguous title that means everything and nothing. So she was like, oh yeah, she'd make reservations under my name with like trade and media specialist for Hennessy to just see
media
like,
specialist works.
Because I wasn't I didn't work for the Canadian team, so she would like get us treatment at like new restaurants that were opening up and had wait lists, be like, I have the trade and media specialist in town. It's like, did you mention that you live with the trade and media specialist? No, I left that part out.
Yeah. No, that's nice, man. Yeah, media specialist sounds like, oh shit, like what an influencer is now, but 15 years ago.
Yeah, it was just like it was appropriately important, but like nobody knew enough to know that it wasn't that important. Yeah.
So tell me about competitions. Like, I'm always interested in how competitions have progressed over the years, what they used to be like, and I guess you've you've at least seen some competitions of today. How were they back then compared to what they are now?
Well, I wouldn't want to compete nowadays.
No.
My career would have taken a very different turn, maybe. I think back then we were still trying to figure it out, and like the main goal, I think, from brands was to get bartenders playing with their product. And if you were going to put time into a competition, into your drink offering, there was a good chance that was going to end up on a menu. Now I think some of the competition cocktails out there are so intricate and so crazy that they never end up on a menu because they're too impractical to go on a standard menu.
Terminology, right? We even say like, "Oh, that's a great competition drink."
Yeah.
Or that's a good menu drink, but not such a good competition drink.
Yeah, completely. And it's because you're not considering costing and pricing out when you're coming up with a competition drink. Yeah, it's the crazier the better almost.
Yeah.
Because that helps you differentiate yourself from everybody else. But for me, competitions led me to all the best things that have happened to me in my career, because I like competitions because A, I'm a very competitive person, and B, everything else I had to do it had to be considered price, time, all of those things we just said. But a competition was the unicorns, the rainbows, everything out there. You want to, do something crazy and off the wall, do it. If it works, like if it becomes a great drink, like do it. Where does your mind want to go with it? Take it that direction. So a competition got me, and funny enough, I think not winning competitions has actually led me to the best things, because I didn't win a Patron competition in Toronto, but the venue for the finals was at a nightclub, and the owner of the nightclub was a small minority owner in the venue I already mentioned, Versailles. And before they were opening, he mentioned to his other partners, like, hey, this guy didn't win, but like by far had the coolest looking drink of the competition. We should get him. And then I got the call like, hey, I hear you should open our spot. And that led to Versailles, and Versailles led to the Belvedere competition. And Belvedere had a competition to look for their next global ambassador called the Belvedere Dream Job Search. And I was in the final 8 globally for that, lost, but 4 days later, Hennessy saw all the videos and that competition. The finals was in New York. And 4 days later, they called me in to interview for a Hennessy position.
Nice. So they just called you and said.
So losing
"We like the
competitions,
cut of
has led to some great things for me.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out very well because, like, though I do respect and Belvedere and it's a great vodka, it's my dog's name at the time was Hennessy. So it worked out really well for me that I went to Hennessy.
Yeah. And you told them that in the interview, I guess.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Right at the end, when they said, "Do you have anything else to add?" I said, "Yes, my dog's name is Hennessy."
Yeah.
And they all laughed, thinking, "Wow, this guy's super charismatic, thinks of everything. What a great joke." And I was like, it took a full year for me to be like, "No, seriously, guys, my dog's name is Hennessy."
Yeah. Yeah, they would have thought it was like an out-of-the-pocket joke. And just like, no, seriously, guys. But yeah. No, I always think like, I mean, it sounds super cheesy, but like when I think about competitions and anyone who enters competitions, like by the time you've got there, like you've done the thing, like, you know, that's winning. Like, I know it sounds like, you know, like, oh, everyone's a winner or whatever. It's like, it's important to win. It's important to be competitive and try your best. But if you try your best and lose, like, you did better than the other 8 billion people on the planet who didn't try or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone who didn't try, they're like, you know, they're not like losers. Maybe they didn't want to try. But if you thought about trying and then didn't try, that's way worse than trying and failing. Like, and you get this networking opportunity and you learn, you know, you learn way more from losing than you do from anything else. And, you know, you meet some people, everyone around you. Like, if someone beat you, then it means you're in the right room, right? Like, what's that saying? Like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like, that's losing a competition is that, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I always learn a lot. You learn more from your defeats than your wins. And like, I certainly did. And one of the things I realized only after I had been an ambassador for a couple of years was what I think competitions are a great interview process. Because what do you want in an ambassador? Well, you want somebody that can probably make a great drink. You want somebody that's good under pressure. You want somebody that can present well.
Yeah.
And if you do well in a competition, you probably have multiple rounds in which you've had to display that to people. And the interesting thing I also learned is like I thought being an ambassador, like those skills were innate in every bartender. And I don't mean that they're not. It's a different skill set. And I realized in competition bartending and in, you know, because there weren't that many cocktail bars in Toronto when I was coming up, I was put into situations where the bars that, you know, the Brassai, that's such a big venue, had a PR team. So they put me on morning television to talk about Brassai, to get people to come for the cocktails for the holiday season or whatever it was, a new menu flip. I didn't realize that those little moments really help benefit me because as a bartender, I think we're really good at dealing with 1, 2, 3 people at a time at the bar, but some people aren't as good at talking to 30 people at a time. So a competition and or a media opportunity for your bar or your venue maybe gives you that opportunity, like where you're not deer in headlights, where you're seemingly a little bit more comfortable.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
All right. So let's, what's this first
Cheers.
drink that we got? Cheers, man.
This is a honey highball. And it is simply 45 ml of Hennessy VS. It is about 2 teaspoons or 10 ml of honey syrup. So half, 1-to-1 honey and water. And you want to, I mean, ideally you have a nice wildflower honey or something like that. Yep. And top up with soda and like club soda and lemon twist. So really, really, really simple. But I think where Cognac is a white wine distillate and being aged in a barrel, you have 2 ways to go. And I really like playing with natural sugars. So honey in this case is really highlighting that white wine and the floral light fruit qualities in Cognac. Whereas if I'd done maple syrup, then I'm going to be highlighting that spicy barrel quality. So yeah.
The honey makes it really nice, man. The honey makes it really, yeah, it's like a honey soda. And almost like that. The Hennessy takes a little bit of a back seat, but it's very nice, actually. It's very refreshing. You don't expect that from, certainly from European standards. I know in North America, you drink cognac in highballs more often than we do over here in Europe. You know, like we say cognac and instantly you think about drinking it straight or with cheese, with you know, in old-fashioned style drinks, spirit-forward drinks. But that's really nice, actually.
Certainly. Well, I think it's like North America. I look at it as like North America with cocktails. It's like a coming together of so many different cultures that it's so much more. It's easier to nudge them in any direction you want to take it because there's no standard way of doing something. Yeah. Whereas I think so much in Europe, and certainly that's changing with the EU and people being able to kind of live and work freely everywhere. But, you know, you go to Germany, they're largely German. You go to France, they're largely French. Yeah. Like outside of maybe the Berlins of the world and the Parises of the world, it's largely just one culture. And so there's a cultural way of drinking and eating that is a little bit harder. It's a little bit more set in stone because they're all just that one culture. Whereas North America, it's like, well, there's a French heritage, German heritage, Italian heritage all sitting at a bar together. Like, there's no standard way of drinking now all of a sudden. So there's a little bit more. There's less rules that I think, whether they're actual rules or governed kind of rules around like how you should do something. Yeah.
I think it's more. It's not so much rules, but just sort of tunnel vision that you get naturally from society. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like you say, like think of a cognac drink, and it's like. You know, like even a really talented bartender in the UK, for example, will just like think really hard on it, and you're like, "Have you thought about putting it with soda?" And you're like, "No, it didn't even cross my mind. Like, not for a second."
Yeah, when you
I thought
go to
about
cognac,
50 variations on old fashions and Vucares, but like never did I think that it could not be spirit forward.
Yeah, but I mean, I use it as a reference all the time that Maurice Hennessy loves cocktails, and like everybody, you know, Hennessy XO on a giant ice cube is very nice. The ice hides the spice and like brings out all the fruit. So in, you know, a hot day, that can be a way that you might enjoy XO. And people are like, you can't put XO on ice. I was like, Maurice Hennessy, the 8th generation of the family, whose name is on every bottle, drinks it that way in the summer. Like, you're telling Maurice Hennessy how to drink Hennessy? Interesting.
Yeah, I know. People, I think like, there's assumed sacrilegiousness, right? Like people assume like, oh, you can't do that. Like he's like, I suppose like, especially with cocktails, you know, like something people always say, including myself, like a cocktail should always be greater than the sum of its parts, but it's not linear.
That's the goal.
Is it? Like, that's the goal, but it's not like this is like, it's not like Hennessy XO is good and this thing is better. It's like it's appropriate for what context and setting and weather and moment of the day, you know, like is it, you know, are you having it for breakfast? I don't know, maybe don't have like a straight Hennessy like or any straight spirit just for breakfast.
Yeah, maybe, like a mojito.
Maybe don't drink for breakfast. I don't know.
Whoa.
Unless you're an ambassador.
No, a mojito is, I like to say, it's like a mojito was invented in Cuba. It's pretty warm there. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. But like it wasn't invented in Manhattan in the depth of winter. Mm-hmm. That's probably where the Manhattan was invented. A little bit cooler time period. You want to warm the soul a little bit? Yeah, great. But do you want a Manhattan on the beach? No. But you could like a Manhattan more often than you like a mojito. You're just in situations that you might like that more. So do I want this on the side of a ski hill? Maybe not. Would that be more a position where I want a Vucare or where I want XO neat? Yeah, probably. It doesn't make one better than the other. It just fits the moment. Yeah. I remember as a young bartender, I used to think like, one day I'm going to own a bar. And if somebody asks for ice in their single malt scotch, I'll ask them to leave. And then I owned a bar and I was like, you can have it whatever way you want. You're paying for it? Cool. You want grapefruit juice in that scotch? Let's do it.
Yeah, I think we've all had that period in our you know, when we learn something and we get protective about this new thing that we've learned, and then we think that there's rules, and then you get like to a certain stage, you're like, no, there's actually no rule. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do. Like, you know, like you want to have, you know, like a really nice scotch with Coke. Have it with Coke. I don't care. Have it how you want to have it, man. I don't really mind. I mean, I can advise you and say, hey, like it's really nice like this, or you know, like or if it's Scotch in particular, have you tried it with like a little bit of water on the side instead of ice? Because I think what people are looking for, like that specific example, is they just think that the Scotch is a bit too harsh. And actually, for me personally, a little bit of chilled water is better than ice because you still get the clean drinking experience, but you get the dilution. You don't need to add the ice. There's little things like that maybe you can tweak people on, but apart from that, drink it how you want to drink it, man. Like, you know, if it tastes good to you, go for it.
No one's trying to make a drink taste worse, so there's always a reason behind something, why something was added, whether culturally or historically.
I mean, there's stupid reasons, of course, but
totally.
That's for people to figure out themselves. So you've been with Hennessy for how long now?
Nearly 15 years.
Nearly 15 years. So how? Tell me about what's it? Is that's your main gig, right? Like you don't have side hustles. So 15 years as a brand ambassador.
Yeah.
What have you learned about life being a brand ambassador for 15 years? That's a long hustle, I reckon, man. I've never been a brand ambassador per se, but that seems
what's kept me is A, I love Hennessy. B, I love our culture. And I think one of the major things is no one knows anything about cognac generally. And so I get to, when I left the bar, I didn't get to make as many cocktails anymore. There wasn't that immediate gratification of a guest sits at the bar, you blow them away with some drink that just like makes their evening. Great. There's an opportunity there to educate on why you did it that way, or maybe the base spirit they've never had before. I missed that. But what I gained tenfold was that ability to educate.
Yep.
And so I get to be, most of the time, the first person to ever speak to somebody about a great base spirit. And I get to talk them through like why this became a category, why people loved it, how it's different to other aged spirits or any other spirit. And I get to see their kind of eyes open. Like I love when, I kind of describe it as you might enter a training with me with like 1 or 2 questions. And if you leave with 10, I've kind of done my job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of career progression. I mean, it's perhaps normal now, but you and me have both started bartending maybe around the same kind of era, and I think when I was a young bartender looking up, it was very linear. All I saw above me for like progression was bartender to bar manager to venue manager of different places.
To a restaurant group.
Maybe it's like a bigger restaurant group, or it's a bigger nightclub, or maybe it's a cocktail bar, and then ownership. But that was it. It was just a straight line up, and now, well, not just now, but like for the past decade at least, there's been way more options than that. And you can be very creative and get into industries which are more sustainable and more mature, and more age appropriate, I might say, because like for many people, bartending can't continue in its natural form into your 40s and 50s because it's brutal on the body, or it can be. At least in terms of the times of day that you work, the length of shifts that you work, the difficulty to have a normal social life, kids, a family, all of this can be tricky, right?
Well, yeah. If somebody, I recommend people if you don't want to climb that ladder, because I think there's also, especially in the tipping culture of North America, there's this weird jump where oftentimes if you're jumping to bar manager, you're all of a sudden making less money than you do behind the bar, but you can't jump straight to GM that makes more money unless you go through that rung on the ladder that is the bar manager, which makes all of a sudden, if they're not working the bar, you're going to make less money potentially than the bar team does with, a hourly wage plus tip. So
it's the same in the UK.
It's a really interesting problem.
It's not even because of tips, really. Now it's changing a little bit, but even 5 years ago, when service charge wasn't such a big thing, or gratuity charge wasn't such a big thing, or automatic gratuity, it wasn't so much because of tipping, but you jumped from bartender getting paid hourly to say like an assistant manager or some bar manager or something, and on paper your salary was higher if the bartender was working 40 hours, but you weren't working 40 hours, you were working 50 hours. And then as a bar manager, you're working 60 hours, but you're getting paid for 40. So actually your hourly wage drops. And compared to a bartender who is working 50 hours and getting tips on top of that because they're on the bar, like, yeah, you take a drop. And it happened to me 100%.
Totally.
Like, I was making way more as a bartender, and then I became a bar manager and then an assistant manager. And then maybe 5 years after getting promoted from bartender, I started making more than being a bartender. It was a 5-year period where I took a drop.
I think, yeah, if you're making those, if you want to not climb that, then I think you should be looking more towards the hotel bars and getting in a hotel group because they're unionized. And so you're going to get taken care of. You're going to have, proper medical, like guaranteed vacations. You get paid while you're on vacation versus, if you're working hourly as a bartender, you can't leave, or in your head, you don't make any money if you take time off or anything like that, or God help you, if you get sick or injured, you're screwed. Whereas being part of unions, you're going to still get taken care of as a bartender. So there's more paths now than ever for you to stay in this industry or industry adjacent, and do it. I mean, I was super lucky. Like, I don't think you can follow my path anymore because I jumped straight to being the national U.S. ambassador, strangely, as a Canadian, being the representative of another country, as the national ambassador for a major brand. Now we are the largest premium spirit by value in the world, but even then we were top 5. And I wasn't a regional ambassador. I was never an ambassador before. I jumped from running a great bar in Toronto to being the national U.S. ambassador for Hennessy. And there was no ambassadors below me. And the ones above me were all, Maurice Hennessy was considered our global ambassador as somebody that went around and talked about the brand. And we had a number of other Maison ambassadors that were French gentlemen that, generally grew up in and around Cognac and had these like great stories about Cognac, but they weren't trade facing, or they didn't come from the bar world. So I was being used on a national scale for all of this stuff and doing all the cocktails for the brand and growing it that way. And then I jumped straight from that to the global ambassador. And though we had these other global ambassadors, we didn't have any trade facing global ambassadors. So I was very lucky in the sense that I got to sort of help design what my job was. So I'm great at it, I think. Half the reason is because I got to come up with what the job was.
Yeah. So that you're saying that doesn't happen now because
that led to my longevity.
There's so many layers to the hierarchy now. Whereas when you jumped in, it was just like big open space here, no one below.
I had no competition really. Yeah. Like after I was hired, it was, we need somebody that knows about trade at the global level eventually, and they're like, well, it's obviously Jordan. There was no real strong process other than, well, we know Jordan already. Jordan knows us already. Jordan's our global guy now.
Yeah.
And so it's now we have other ambassadors in many markets around the world. But I was able, one of the reasons I think I was able to stick with this role for this long is not only do I love the brand, I get to educate, which fills my tank. I get to go talk to our trade all over the world, but I helped to come up with what the job was. So funny enough, I didn't put anything, like the job is tailored around me.
Yeah. That's nice. And I'm with you there on the education thing. Right? I think like there's maybe a financial and a sort of there's financial progression within our careers, but then there's also impact progression, right? So like you feel as a like I loved bartending, but you're on the front lines impacting one person at a time. And you feel as you progress, like I want to be able to impact more people. So how do you do that? You take one step back and you educate bartenders, and then they will then go and impact guests. And like for me personally, it's like I think, okay, what's another step back from that? How do I keep zooming out? And it's like, the best thing to do, like, I mean, there's many different ways to do it, but the way I think about it now is like I teach people who who teach teachers who teach bartenders. You know, it's like that expands my impact so much more. You know, to be able to speak like to these people, and then those like whatever, it's like very few people I teach each year now. It's maybe 30 people a year or something like that. But those people then go and teach other people, and it just expands, and it's like this impact that, yeah.
It's a cool responsibility though as well, because as I said, like Cognac is not very well known, and I think I like to use the example that like if I represented a gin, like I really like gin, but like a lot of people understand how gin is made already because there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of gin ambassadors out there, so there's a lot of people telling people how gin's made.
Flavored vodka, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's what I hear. But that's so if I were a gin ambassador, a major part of my speech is likely around like, well, what botanicals do we use and how do we approach that? And it's like, but with Cognac, I have to start with like, what is Cognac? And I think like gin and whiskey ambassadors don't start with what is gin, what is whiskey. It's like they're generally in a room of people that already know what whiskey is. So they're just explaining how their whiskey is different than the other whiskeys. And whether that be storytelling or technical information, you know, for different strokes for different folks, different rooms you're in might require one over the other. But with Hennessy, I'm generally having to tell people how Cognac is made. Like, hey, let's start with it's made from grapes. And that sometimes is just mind-blowing to people. And then you build on that. So
is it really, even with bartenders, you think like, what would you say the percentage is? How many people know like it's made from grapes already, or that it's some kind of distilled wine?
I don't know about percentage, but I'm constantly I'm not surprised rather when people don't know it's made from grapes. Like I sometimes have to remind myself, yeah, you got to start the presentation there, because Cognac, let's look at the numbers. 50% of Cognac out there is Hennessy.
Yeah.
Another 40% of Cognac, so 90% in total, is Hennessy, Remy Martin, Martel, and Cavassier. Yeah. So there's another 10% that's, you know, close to 200 different small producers. Well, name me another category where 4 brands control 90% of it. That's a major category. Like maybe you're looking at Del Maguey and Mezcal has a large share, but Mezcal I wouldn't consider a large category yet.
No.
And so with that, there's reasons for it. Cognac's been around a very long time. Hennessy's not even the oldest, but we're 259 years old. So with that amount of time and with the trials and tribulations that went on in the world, it just happened within business, like expansions and takeovers and whatever. You're down to 4 that control 90%. Yeah. But what that means for education is there's not a lot of educators out there for Cognac.
Yeah.
And if Cognac's not educating, who's educating on brandy? Who's, you know, like you don't learn about distilled grapes often from the Pisco ambassador because there are even less of them. Than there are Cognac ambassadors. So it's
like 7 flights to get from Chile to Europe. So, yeah.
So it's there's the problem of breadth. We just don't have the breadth to cover everybody. So you can't blame somebody for not knowing when people, I think, get scared to play with things that they don't know. So half of my job is making them comfortable, that they feel comfortable to play with Hennessy. Because if anyone were to ask them, what'd you put in that cocktail? Oh, I put Hennessy Cognac in it. Like, what's that? Like, what's that? They should be able to answer. And if they can't answer it, then why would they play with that spirit?
Yeah. And I suppose even like this drink, like letting them know that it's okay to put it in a highball. Like, don't worry about it. Like, maybe that's already understood in North America, but in Europe, they do not put Cognac in highballs.
So I think Europe has a better understanding of that brandy comes from fruit. And that, you know, Cognac, most of that is grape-based brandy, and Cognac, obviously, white wine. But I think there's less of an understanding of the grape base in the U.S. and North America, in the sense of, I think a lot of people look at Cognac as a type of whiskey. Maybe not a lot, but like the people that don't know it's from grapes look at it as a type of whiskey because it's close to the whiskey on the shelf. Yep. It's also the same color, great. But I think there is, once they know it, there's a willingness to play with it. It doesn't have any like societal norms or stigmas attached to the drinking of it. So they're more willing to throw it in drinks than Europe, whereas Europe is a little bit more at ease with the brandy side of things because most of the cultures here have brandy of some type historically in their culture, whether it's like, some pure unaged brandy out of fruit brandies out of Germany and the Bavarian areas, or whether it's Spanish brandy or Cognac or Armagnac, Calvados, any of those. There's a historical region near you that probably makes some sort of distilled fruit, and yet in North America it's like whiskey first.
Yeah. So what would you say the differences are? Like it's cool that you mentioned like Cognac and Armagnac and Spanish brandy, and then you obviously have different fruits, Calvados. What's the pear one called? Do we just call it Perry or
still Calvados?
Calvados, pear Calvados, right? Yeah. So what would you say? Like, well, let's start with Cognac and Armagnac. What would you say the main differences there? Because they're very similar.
I think in general, all of them are, because you're based on most brandy. Let's just focus on grape brandy. Grape is so subject to location and what we would call terroir, and the soil, and not only the soil, but like the climate of an individual year combined with the soil, combined with the farmer and how they're going to treat it and react to all of those conditions is going to create different flavor profiles of the wine. We know that from the wine world, Cabernet Sauvignon grown in one country versus another, or maybe an area of a country versus another area in the same country, or field to field, a shady side of the valley to a sunny side of the valley is going to taste different. So if you're going to take that wine and then condense it through distillation, you're going to get an even greater difference there. You're concentrating the difference. So when you look at Armagnac to Cognac, there's a terroir separation. Now there's also a historic separation of the style that was generated through distillation. So historically, Armagnac went through a column still.
Yeah.
And then they started to try to better mimic Cognac at one point. So they started to go into copper pots. And now there's a mix, though the vast majority are using column. There are still some now that use copper pots. But so I would say at the core, it's about, well, if you're using grapes, it's about terroir. What can your terroir do? And there is a lot of clay in the soil in Armagnac, and that is similar to some of the growing regions within Cognac, like Fimbois. So you're getting like a lot of fruit out of that soil, and I think that is some of the similarities.
Oh, so you get fruit notes.
Yeah, like big red fruit notes.
Big red fruit notes, more from clay soil. And then the converse to that would be more chalky soil, right?
Yeah, so the chalky limestone forward soil of Grand and Petit Champagne in general leads to floral and bright fruit qualities like apricot versus something like, I think Fimbois, once it's aged in barrel, gets to more like that red fruit, that cherry, that dried cherry note, things like that.
And you say there's more aging potential in a clay soil. I would say it the other way around. Is there more aging potential in a limestone chalky soil than there is in a
generally clay soil? Generally that's what we see in Cognac. So we have Grand, Petit Champagne, Grand Champagne and Petit Champagne. Then we have Fimbois, Borderie, Bon Bois, and Bois Ordinaire as our 6 growing regions, and we generally see the thick chalk and limestone Grand and Petit Champagne, and it's the same grape, or like 99% the same grape, Uni Blanc, throughout Cognac, but the different soil or terroir is leading to different expectations. And I would say that if we got a young, mature Grand or Petit Champagne, like I'm saying, under 10 years, that would be an outlier to what we expect from that region. Whereas in general, we look at Grand and Petit Champagne and we think it's about 10 years. It's kind of like Bordeaux wine. It's about 10 years when it starts hitting its stride, or it helps hitting its maturity. So we tend to see more Grand and Petit Champagne in older cognacs, and less, let's say, Fimbois and Borderie in the older cognacs. And it would the inverse is true as well. So if there is a really old Fimbois or Borderie or Bon Bois or Bois Ordinaire, we would look at that as maybe an outlier to those markets that they would tend to reach their maturity younger. Now, it's important that we say one is not better than the other, because if you want a VS quality, something that you can make a cocktail with that, you know, is price approachable, maybe you're probably going to have a lot more Fumboir Borderie in that younger cognac, because it's not, a VS isn't going to be over 10 years old, where, you know, we can look at a competitor of Hennessy's, Remy Martin. They don't have a VS quality anymore. They stopped making it many, many years ago because they, you know, if I can speak for them, they probably just had it to have the line extension, to have a VS, VSOP, XO. But they focus on Grand and Petit Champagne only. So it behooved them to stop using it for VS and start using those eau de vie, letting them take that time to mature at the age of a VSOP, at the age of an XO, and really, you know, shine more.
You think that's because they maybe have a bit more of a purist attitude? They don't necessarily want to see their products in cocktails? Because, I mean, I think about a VS, a VSOP, XO. I actually really like a Hennessy VS and XO, and I would probably put them maybe XO, VS, VSOP, to be honest, in that order of my likes. For a cocktail, I would use a VS over a VSOP.
Interesting. Why?
I just think it's got more backbone. I think it's it's just a bit. There's a bit more room to move with it, you know. Like there's something that comes from aging, especially aging something fruity. With any kind of fruit notes, the same goes for aged tequilas. I just find it hard to deal with in a cocktail. So VS is straightforward. You kind of know what you're getting. You got a little bit of room for error, you know, in the balancing, and it just plays nice with other flavors. So that's kind of my feeling with a VS over a VS.
Yeah. So VS and XO share the characteristic that they both tend to go into new oak barrels at the beginning of their life, which gives them that kind of duality of that fruit with that big spice from the barrel, whereas the VSOP does not. So it's interesting that you would order them in that direction. It just shows that you really like that oak characteristic, and that backbone you spoke about. So I think if we're, you know, using the example of Remy not having that VS, I don't think they were afraid, you know, speaking on just speculation for them, I don't think they thought about not being in cocktails. I think they had a house style, and the way cognac was drank historically was, was at that dinner, after dinner, that digestif. And so they were happy to lean into that age. But as cocktails started to become a thing, I'm sure they focused much more on their VSOP and getting that in cocktails to kind of show off those younger cognacs. And I think when you do it well, you can have cognac that plays in those cocktails, and people get to experience Hennessy in that way, or cognac in that way. And then maybe that leads them to become a cognac lover, and they want, you know, maybe an XO after dinner. Not that XO can't go in a great cocktail as well, but maybe they want that XO or even higher range at special moments in their life. And I think cocktails are the great trial thing. They're great to try a flavor for the first time, or great to try a spirit for the first time, because you're not dealing with the full thing all at once. You're dealing with just a flavor profile that you're like, oh, I like this flavor profile. Okay, well, this is nothing like just drinking Hennessy neat in a glass, but there's something of that there. Maybe it's 5, 10, 15%. You like that? Okay, well, now let's try a little bit of a stronger cocktail where Hennessy makes up a larger proportion. Did you like that? Oh, what did you like about that? Now we just keep building in that direction until we get you to neat. And maybe we never get you to neat, but that's fine, as long as you find something you enjoy. And I think the cocktails, there's so many people that are like, well, I like, you know, if you walk into my bar and you already know how you like something, my job's easy.
Yeah.
I just got to make you feel at home, and making you feel at home is making you the drink that you just told me how to make it. You want it neat, or you want it on the rocks, or you want it, you know, with some split of some kind? Great. Cocktails are for when you don't know what you want, or you want to play around in a different field. Cool. Like, let's find out what you like. Let's go in that direction. Oh, you normally drink white wine? Okay, maybe this is the cocktail for you. Light, bright, refreshing, like your white wine. Maybe you go red wine. Okay, well, let's go a little bit darker then. So I think that's really interesting in playing with cocktails in that way. And I think with cognac, it's each one is so different, like the VS, the VSOP, the XO, and not just for, and then you take the VS for somebody else or the VSOP for somebody else or the XO for a different brand. Every brand has their own thoughts and stylistic ideals around their cognac that, you can play and get a world of flavor out of all of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same way you can with any category. But I think with cognac, so many bars just, they have one bottle behind the shelf.
Yeah, it's untapped. Yeah. It's like, it hasn't been explored in the same way as many others. And it hasn't had its, like, I don't know if it's going to have this because it's such an old and semi-understood category that, what I'm getting at is like gin had this craze a few years ago.
Renaissance, yeah.
It had its renaissance, and then mezcal and tequila, maybe we're still in it, maybe we're on the tail end of it, but I think, I think that will kind of stick around, but I don't know if cognac will have it necessarily because it's hundreds of years old and it's been well established. It's like mezcal had it because mezcal wasn't well established, but it's got a great heritage and a great culture, and it's grown massively and become really good quality. And there's such a interesting history behind it. I suppose brandies like cognac. I love like all different kinds of eau de vie as well, I think especially in France. France has a long history. I get like a random bottle of Mirabelle. Have you had Mirabelle? Like this plum brandy, like that just like, I'm like, does anyone actually make this? Does any company make this? And I'm like, no, it's just like old ladies that grow plums and they have in their garden. They're like, they make it. And I'm like, it's like some of the best stuff I've ever tasted. Like, why isn't this like marketed? But it's kind of cool as well that it's not marketed.
I think we did have a rise, but it got folded into the brown spirit rise. So whiskey blew up, but it wasn't just whiskey. It was brown spirits. In many cases, Hennessy and cognac in general was outpacing brown spirits. It's just no one noticed because there's less of us. In the last... so when I started, I said Hennessy was the 5th largest premium spirit. Now, in the world, in the business side of spirit production, a premium spirit is considered anything over $25 US dollar.
Okay.
A bottle. So the people above us at the time by value, not by number of bottles, but by value of their overall sales, was Absolute Vodka, and not in any order. Absolute Vodka, Johnny Walker, Jack Daniels, and Crown Royal. And Hennessy surpassed all of them in the last 15 years to become the #1 premium spirit by value in the world. And we did that because brown spirits all became more popular. We just grew bigger than our competitors that were of similar size at that point. Now, will there be a brandy renaissance? I don't know, because you'd need other markets to really push for that as well. And like, you can have cognac pushing, but if Spanish brandy is not ready to push or make the value investment, then can cognac do it on its own? And if Armagnac's not ready, if Calvados isn't ready, if, unaged, brandies like Pisco aren't ready, can we all coordinate and grow the brandy category together? That would be tough.
Yeah.
But
it's some very different cultures to get on the same boat and go in the same direction there.
But
like
it's
South America, Spain, France.
Yeah, good luck. So we can say that's probably not, that's a low percentage chance of happening. But I think what we are seeing is that I like to say the steak and potato man is dead. Like that classic, I think I'm a little older, but I say my parents' generation, and yet my parents were never really this way, but kind of growing up, I guess they were, in a sense of my dad just bought the same case of beer like every week. And now he would try a lot of different beers as craft beers have become a thing, and I've gotten him more into different things. But there was a time where it's like, oh, you were a Crown and Coke drinker. That's what somebody drank. They knew their brand. And I think that what we see is that person is gone now. We see people far more willing to experiment, and they will be in, their own economic situation will put them in a different tier. Maybe they're in the premium spirit tier, the super premium spirit tier. Maybe they're in the budget tier, but they're still going to play within that tier. They're going to have, oh yeah, I feel like a vodka soda right now, but I might feel like a rum cocktail later on or whatever. And your economic situation puts you at whatever tier of value bottle you're going for. And people aren't just stuck in one category. So that tequila drinker is not just a tequila drinker. There may be a premium spirit drinker, and they may choose tequila 50% of the time, but then they're going to choose whiskey maybe 20% of the time. And the goal of a lot of brands is to get a share of that mindset of when you walk into a bar. Yeah, maybe you're going to have Hennessy or Cognac 50% of the time, but you're also going to have these others. Like the goal of any brand is to grow that mind share, so that you get that. But we find more and more our competition is not things in our category; it's things in our price range.
Yeah, especially with brown spirits, right? Because like you said, like brown spirits all grew together. So if I'm a cognac drinker, I'm much more I'm much more open to the idea of trying a bourbon, a scotch, a rye, because they're all brown spirits. They're all been put in oak. There's a similarity between all of them because they've all got that oak influence. So yeah. So what do you think do you think there's like room for because this is the thing, right? So you got like when I talk about mezcal and gin having this sort of renaissance. And then I think about could it like happen in the same way for brandy? My inclination is no, for like a couple of reasons. Like one, it's like really well established already, and it's already a huge. I mean, like Hennessy is not like a small company looking to get its break but at this point. And then you've also got a barrier to entry naturally in all brown spirits where you have to like actually age stuff, and especially like with something like cognac where there's a denomination of origin where like you literally have to make it here from these grapes, and it's pretty hard to open something new, and it's pretty hard to do anything creatively like outside anything really wild, like we're going to start using these grapes from this area over here, and we're going to just age it for like 6 months, and we're going to throw like extra wood in the barrel, or we're going to like do spontaneous fermentation or something like that. Is there some like room, do you think, for creativity? What could be on the horizon, or is it more like restricted because heritage is so important?
I think there's everybody wants to say they're innovative, but like innovation in gin, for instance, might come quite quickly because there's no age requirement there. So you're able to experiment.
I can innovate a gin right now,
pretty
have
easily.
It for you by the end of the podcast.
Totally, because your distillation time is cut quite significantly, and you're not required. Like cognac, we can only distill until the end of March. Like we get one harvest of grapes a year.
Yep.
Unlike whiskey, grain in certain areas of the world, you're getting at least 2, if not 3 harvests a year of your grain. So you can keep distilling all year long. Well, we only have that one chance to experiment with new distillation techniques, let's say, or that one chance every year, or like to see even how we might change the fields or how they grow in the fields. That takes years to figure out because it's a natural process where, how you might harvest grain, you get to try that 3 different times a year versus grapes. It's like you got your one shot. So I say that to say that like innovation is there, but it takes longer to come about. And where we're innovating is we're getting really great, much better eau de vie now than at any point in history. Now that might seem kind of obvious to some, like, oh, we have all this technical advancement, but it's come about through old practices where we are looking at Hennessy on sustainable side of like, how do we preserve our environment? Well, it turns out natural soil or living soil, so not a lot of pesticide use, and even being organic, you would use a lot of copper sulfite, which is natural, but the copper to be organic, you have to use a lot of copper sulfite to spray the plants down. That ends up killing the soil. So it's worse soil, but it technically could be called organic at that point. We prefer living soil where we're using the least amount of pesticides possible or anything, because instead of a pesticide, we might just be using different plants to grow that invite predators of those pests and, different elements like that. And we found that the living soil, it's better for the environment, which means it's better for all of us, but it also makes better wine, which makes better eau de vie. And so these are the innovations that are happening. And when you talk about production after that, we're getting all these beautiful flavors out of these eau de vie, and we better understand what happens to them in the barrel. So playing around with different shapes of barrel, or different sizes of barrel, rather, not shapes, they're all the same shape, but different sizes of barrel, the dry versus damp cellars, different age variants for different eau de vie. That's going to lead to some unique flavors. Now, how we explain that to people, it's a little bit easier to be like, hey, we did a tequila finish on this.
Yeah,
that's
we added saffron to this gin. That's easy.
Yeah,
when you say we used a slightly higher humidity in the cellar for this one, and we'll know what that.
It becomes a real nerdy conversation.
We'll say what that's going to taste like in 50 years' time.
Yeah.
You'll be dead. Okay, cool. Thanks for the information. Yeah. What about?
Look at this service.
Oh shit! Hello. Thank you, sir.
Look at this dainty little glass.
Question, but my coaster's on a wobble. Cheers, brother. All right, cocktail number 2.
This is a drink that, I have been, I think, single-handedly trying to bring back. This is a Between the Sheets.
I was going to say it's a Between the Sheets. You should have let me guess.
And it was...
I wasn't confident enough, though.
Yeah. It's sort of a forgotten classic in the sense that it's a classic based on another classic. So the sidecar is invented in 1920 at Harry's New York bar in Paris. And the story goes that 10 years later, 1930, a regular comes in and instead of ordering a sidecar, orders something a little different. And Harry creates the Between the Sheets, which is equal parts cognac, rum, orange curacao, and a half part lemon juice shaken. And so I think, one, I like it because it's a split base, and split bases are rare, and yet a lot of classic cocktails, like really old classics, are split bases, but I don't think they get the love because what brand wants to push a split base? Yeah, exactly. They want their product in there, so they get it out there. It's a little bit, it's one extra step on making a sidecar in that sense. So, they've gotten lost somehow. But we've already talked about the Vucret. That's another split base of whiskey and cognac. And so I think it's beautiful because if you're a cognac fan, you might list cognac first on the cocktail list. But if you're a rum bar, list the rum first. You make everybody happy. And I think the split base adds a lot of complexity in a relatively simple cocktail. But you can get some amazing complexity out of those split bases because they can go in any direction. Yeah. You use I like a light, like 3 to 5 year old rum, because for me in this, the Hennessy VSOP is doing a lot of the lifting on the depth and complexity. So I'm looking for the rum to add a little bit of spice and a little bit of vanilla. And I think you get that in like a 3 to 5 year. But if you want to put, a 12-year-old rum in this, then this is getting darker and fuller and less light bright. But in this case, you're going that direction. Or you could go much lighter and go a really like floral, bright cognac, like, I don't know, a Hennessy Pure White. And you could get like a really light rum. And you could go completely bright on that side.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how dry it is. And it's... it's quite rare to have such a dry... citrusy cocktail that's so spirit forward. So I think it's really nice. It feels like it should be a stirred down drink, but it's
deceptive.
Yeah,
this one.
It's a yeah.
So this recipe is
it'll get you
30 ml Hennessy VSOP, 30 ml light like 3 to 5 year rum. I think I I don't know what we put in this one, but I had on my spec sheet Eminente Claro, which is, you know, in and around that range. And then 30 ml Grand Marnier with 15 ml lemon juice shaken. Now, I like Grand Marnier or, you know, the dry Curacao because...
Pierre Ferrand.
Yeah, I like
nice.
I like cognac-based Curaçaos. You know, if they're going to be going in a sidecar, they're going to be going in between the sheets. We've already got cognac. That makes sense. If you're not using cognac, of course, they still work. But then other Curaçaos, you know, that are more grain spirit based, you know, are much brighter, just pure orange flavor. But if you've already got the cognac complexity, why not continue that trend?
Yeah, I think I've done them before with triple sec, and it comes through a bit medicinal and a little bit too sharp, and I think if you do it with a straight triple sec, you have to dial down. You can't do it equal parts because that orange like sharpness just cuts through, kills the cognac, kills the rum.
Well,
that's really nice and soft, and you also need to add the sweetness. There's no sweetness in there. Outside of the rum and the Curacao, right?
Yeah, so you also have to watch for that because like some rums can have a lot of sugar added. Hey, some cognacs can have a lot of sugar added, and so you have to watch for that with your orange Curacao that you can't, you know. So Hennessy USA used to represent or used to distribute Grand Marnier in America. Yeah, and I used to go around training our sales teams there to be very careful about just swapping Grand Marnier in the sidecars because it made sense to a sales rep to go around and say like, well, if I get Grand Marnier and Hennessy in this bar's sidecar, I win. I have two products in the sidecar. Amazing, I win. But if you're taking triple sec out and adding Grand Marnier, triple sec, much sweeter, that pure straight bright orange flavor, but Grand Marnier, less sweet, more alcohol. And if you're just swapping it 1-to-1, that's going to be a really unbalanced drink likely now. And so congratulations, you got both your products in the drink, but you've made a worse drink that now gets returned more and no one orders it. So I think bartenders are getting better. More and more places have really, you know, great bartenders that will recognize an unbalance when it's presented to them.
Yeah,
but
of course.
I think the sidecar for many years was like the most mismade classic cocktail on the planet because how many orange flavored liqueurs are out there on the planet? There's more orange flavored liqueurs than anything else. Whereas I gave you a recipe that included elderflower liqueur. There's like 3 of them.
Yeah, there's 3
so
options.
it's really hard to get wrong.
2 of them are the wrong ones.
Yeah,
so.
It's really hard to get wrong. Whereas with an orange liqueur, it's like at one point I think like every brand had an orange liqueur.
Yeah. I mean, even you just said like, you know, which I think is maybe a North American perspective, like that triple sec is sweeter and less alcohol than Grand Marnier. But
well, generally,
I think of a triple sec. I know Cointreau don't call themselves a triple sec anymore, but they are the quintessential triple sec in my view.
Well, yeah, to me they're the outlier. They're the outlier of the triple secs because I'm so used to like
outlier, but also the biggest.
Yeah,
they're both the exception and the rule. So like
I'm so used to though, like, you know, especially coming from the club side or like big bars, like they were like, well, Cointreau's
plastic bottle triple secs.
Really nice luxury to have, but it was generally like your McGuinness or your Bowls triple sec that are going to be anywhere between 23% to 30% alcohol, and therefore more sugar added to it. And it's like, great. But yeah, certainly if you've got the Cointreau, but even then it's got that bright flavor. So it's then going to mess with
it hasn't
something.
Been softened with that,
totally.
With that cognac, for sure.
Yeah, it tastes like you're like, you know, it's licking that orange peel oil or like you're getting that pure orange oil.
It's just going to kill everything else that you did to the drink. At that point, you may as well just
potentially
have a triple second soda.
Yeah.
You know. But I had a question about the. Well, one thing you said there, like that sparked my interest. What's the deal with adding sugar to cognac? I think this is something people are interested in. So, you know, we hear about it in rum, but I don't think you hear about it so much in.
Well, historically, so it is permitted. You can add 3 things to cognac. You can add sugar, dosage. You can add coloring, which we use. There are 4 generally considered in the spirit world 4 types of caramel coloring. We have to use the D type, which is like burnt sugar. It's natural. It's not like an artificial dye or anything. We burn the sugar ourselves. If you've ever had burnt sugar, it's quite bitter. It's quite bad. If you taste it, to taste it, you would have to have a really flavorless cognac. And we use it in 1 to 100,000 parts only because the bottles are clear. They have to match color-wise. Otherwise, humans think there's a problem. And
I mean, that's just, I mean, like, I think for people to know, I think it's pretty much every brown spirit does that apart from bourbon and maybe rye as well.
Yeah, there's some legal...
Because they're using new oak. So they don't have to match colors so much because they're pretty sure that when they put things in new oak, after X number of years, however long they age,
they have a pretty consistent
it's pretty much going to be the same
there,
because the tree grew. We made it into a barrel and then X, Y, Z. But with cognac, you're going to use it for, you're going to use new barrels and then you're going to reuse them and then reuse them. And, and same with Scotch and rum.
We also see it as like the longer you age something, the more consistent the color gets because you're blending so many together. So it's like the color might be slightly off after 5 years, especially if one is new oak and one is not. But after 30 years, you're going to have the same amount of extraction generally out of that combination of eau de vie, so you won't need it. But the sugar is the third thing you can add. And this was done historically and just hasn't changed in that sugar used to be added to distillates because it would hide imperfections in distillation when we didn't really know what we were doing. So when brands talk about mimicking older styles of cognac, well, to do that, you'd have to add more sugar because that would have been the style. The same way like Brut Champagne is the most common now, but historically, Brut was the uncommon variant and more people liked a demi-sec or something with a lot more sugar added to it. But tastes have changed, and so we're still permitted to add sugar. But realistically, when you look at it, there's no... brands aren't really talking about it as much. So I think that's where people get a surprise factor on it. But when you look at something like Hennessy VS, 1 ounce of pure untouched vodka, so no additives like a Polish vodka. Let's use Belvedere. 130 ml pour of Belvedere is 65 calories. There's no way around that. If you're 40% alcohol and you have no other additives, you're 65 calories.
Oh, really?
When you get like a skinny girl vodka, it's less alcohol. That's why it's less calories.
We call them skinny bitches here, so you know.
Great. So we can swear on this podcast. Got it. But 130 ml pour of Hennessy VS is 66 calories.
Okay.
So it's the barrel is adding some of its sugars and all of that, and it's just creating it that way. Yeah. So yeah, we are permitted, but generally you'll taste it. If you are tasting a cognac and it has that round mouthfeel, but when you really delve in, you're not getting a lot of flavor. Yeah. Like you're not getting a lot of distinct flavors. You're just getting like roundness. Then maybe they've added sugar to it to also mimic maturity in a way. Yeah. To get maybe a cognac that wasn't because an immature eau de vie also can be quite bitter and tart almost, like an immature wine. And then as it matures, it rounds out and the fruit qualities start to come out more. Yeah. Okay. So you said how many things are there to add? So we're done color and sugar? And the wood batonnage is the wood extract. So you are permitted if you wanted to. They would take some spirit and some wood chips and get artificial wood flavor out of it. Well, it'd be a natural wood flavor, but it would be artificially increasing. So a concentrate of and I don't actually know anyone doing that. No. I think if you were doing that, maybe some brandies. I don't know anyone in cognac doing it. And realistically, I think maybe some cooking brandies have it. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, because then you're just looking for that big wood note, and if you're going to be cooking with it, then whatever. But no, I don't know any cognacs doing that. Yeah, I mean, so many people have tried to cheat the aging process, and it's like you can have laws to allow it, but it just tastes like shit at the end of the day. So historically, I think it was just done. It was done. It's one of those things that was done historically and is not really done anymore. So it's just still there. Yeah. But Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't
actually,
know. I don't know why the reason would be to do that, because you're gonna taste it. So it would be in a cognac that doesn't either, and you wouldn't get to use that against the minimum age requirement either. It would just be to get that flavor profile. So like maybe a cooking cognac or something like that.
Yeah. So it could, you could maybe theoretically make it taste somewhere like an XO, but you'd still have to write VS on the bottle because you added this. But I mean, you could cheat that process by having smaller barrels, maybe anyway. Like there's different ways.
Yeah. I mean, you look at
all you're doing is increasing wood to spirit ratio, right? What's the minimum size of a barrel for cognac? Is there a minimum size?
I don't think there is.
Okay, so they could potentially just do little baby bourbon barrel, little baby barrels.
Yeah, I mean the traditional cognac barrel is 270 liters.
Yeah, I think we call that a hogshead, do we? Or is it just a cask? I think we call that cask.
And we, that was the traditional barrel, but in sometime about 65 years ago, we started using dry cellars, and that was simply because all the old cellars were by the water, because the Charente River was our transport system out to the coast to get on ships to travel around the world. And by being near the river, it just made for easy transport. Then we needed to expand, but all the stuff by the river in the towns were taken up. So they moved cognac facilities elsewhere and different places, higher up on a hill, something like that. You're no longer near the water source, so you get quick drainage through the soil with natural clay floor maybe. Now you're getting a drier cellar, and what we found was that accelerated the angel share. So it did something to the cognac that was new and different, and to help adjust for that, we switched the size of the barrel to a 350 liter. So today, like I'll use Hennessy as an example, about 80% of our stock is in 350 liter barrels, because it helps to control the angel share through smaller surface area with the larger barrels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now that I think about it, just visually, when I think about my time in Scotch whiskey aging houses and then cognac, they do seem like bigger barrels. I never really thought about it too much, but yeah, they are generally bigger.
And then the really old stuff would go in a torchon, which is double the 270, so a 540 for even smaller surface area, and generally those are going to be in the traditional cellars as well. So you're looking at like a really gentle maturation over the later years of its life. Yeah. But also at that point, anything over 30, 40 years, all the volatile compounds have already evaporated, so it's a much slower evaporation anyway.
Yeah. So I think that's something interesting that like I would guess, like like as you say, if you're telling a lot of bartenders that cognac is made from grapes, then we're really getting into the weeds when we talk about the aging process and how you move from barrel to barrel, depending on how long it's already been aging and how long you expect to age it. Because I think it's kind of interesting. Like you can say, okay, this is XO, and let's say it's 12 years old, or minimum 12 years old. The stuff in the bottle, you're actually not you're talking about, okay, it's 12 years, but like it could be 12 years in a 270 liter barrel, 12 years in a 540 liter barrel, and those two things are going to be wildly different. And it also could be 12 years in a 540 liter barrel that's been used for 20 years before anything went in it. And that's going to be a much different aging.
Well, this is where age is such a weird thing, because to my knowledge, age came about when American whiskeys started to increase their shares of the market, and Scotch looked at it and went, well, how are we different? How do we market ourselves? And they went, oh, we're older. Well, why are you older? Well, you don't use new oak. You have a cooler climate generally, so it takes you longer to age to get that same flavor profile you're looking for. So yes, you're older, but the reasons for that are, something like what you just said, like, well, what size of barrel? How many times have you used it? What type of cellar? All of that meant, they were older, but they weren't older because older's better. They were older to get to a flavor profile. But somebody in marketing went, age is good.
Yep.
Older's better. And that really screwed us, because the average consumer doesn't take the time to know the intricacies of why.
Yeah.
The same reason, like, I assume my lawyer knows what he's doing. I'm not in jail right now, so that makes sense. I haven't been audited for my taxes, so I assume my accountant knows what he's doing as well. So we leave, the consumer leaves the spirit knowledge to the spirit houses, and marketing maybe led them astray at a time. And you don't need to know the specifics. And it's one of the reasons why cognacs don't really, for the most part, put numbers on the bottles, because age is just a number.
Yeah.
Maturity is what we're looking for. And age you can get to by...
That's what my girlfriend keeps telling me. Sorry.
I joke that my mom says age and maturity are two vastly different things.
Yeah.
You can get older. Yeah. Does that make you more mature? Maybe, maybe not. Maturity takes...
I think I peaked about 5 years ago and I'm on my way down now, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen. Not to our eau de vie, but like to people. It's, well, you've got a little one that like helps with that. But maturity takes effort. Like you have to attempt. For people, it's wins and losses in your life. It's trials and tribulations. It's things you've gone through. It's people that are in your life that have all led you to grow as a person and mature. For humans, that's a lifelong journey. For an eau de vie or a whiskey or anything, we can. There are moments where we have master blenders or master tasters that are going to taste and say, "This is the pinnacle of the point of elegance. Like it's not going to get better than this. From here, it's going to get over matured, over oaked, over concentrated. It's perfect right now for what this is, and I can use this to make an incredible blend." And at some point, we just need to trust those people and say, they know what they're doing. So, I'm going to trust them to create a great cognac out of it. Unfortunately, marketers have put us in a position where we're looking for a number. We're looking for something that we don't really understand to justify another thing we don't understand.
Yeah, well, people don't like the answer, it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
They're like, just can you give me a number that I can use as a verification method?
Totally.
Like, this one says 8, so that sounds like, like back bar but bottom shelf. This one says 12, so that sounds good. Oh, this one says 16, that's nice. So yeah, I think like people want a simple answer, and like you can't do much about that really. Like it is what it is. But
yeah,
it's funny
everybody hates.
It's funny
complicated.
that you say that like Scotch marketers did it, because then they aggressively tried to backtrack on that like a few years ago, and then now they're trying to promote NAS, no age statement, scotches, because they realized like they marketed it hard, like older is better, and then they ran out of old stuff, and then they're like, oh shit, actually like now that there's a big like demand for 16-year-old scotch, and it takes 16 years to make 16-year-old scotch, we're like, oh shit, I'm going to be like 60. Like, no,
totally.
That doesn't sound good, actually.
But
so they kind of screwed themselves.
But we better understand now more than ever what's happening in the liquid, in the barrel, so we can better get there. We can make a better whiskey. We can make a better cognac at a younger age. Like we started using dry cellars. That allowed us to hyper mature some eau de vie. Some eau de vie reacted differently than they would have in a damp cellar to a dry cellar. But to better control that, we had to go to a larger barrel size to better control that process. And that was an innovation. Now, that was 65 years ago or so now. But that was an example of like, okay, well, we can make things different and we can get to certain flavors maybe a little bit quicker than others. But that's hard to explain to people, to be like, well, we do it better now. Well, but there's such an idea that like, no, the way we did it 200 years ago is better. Maybe in some ways, but in other ways, we now know the science behind it and we can better do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there just has to be layers, right? Like you can't really have a single answer for every person at every knowledge level. At the end of the day, like the age statement works for some people, but maybe your job as the brand ambassador is like, yes, okay, age statement, great. Use that for base level interactions, and it's good. It's on the label. It's very easy to communicate. But here's the real thing. Here's the complicated part that most people won't learn. Size of the barrel matters. age of the barrel matters, what liquid goes in there matters, the humidity of the cellar matters. Like all of these things play with each other, and there's going to be wild differences. And that's, like bourbon is the perfect example, right? Like you don't see many bourbons talking about being 15 years old, because if you put white whiskey into a brand new oak barrel and
in a really hot rickhouse.
In a really hot rickhouse, and leave it for 15 years, it's gonna taste like shit afterwards. Like many times.
Shit is a subjective term, but yes, it's probably not to most people's preference at that point. I think bourbon tops out for me at 15 years. Like I don't want anything older than that.
Yeah.
But that's me. Some people may want that. The same way that you said, the VS and the XO are to your liking and whatever. And I think there needs to be, like, we have trust in brands. And I think in those ways, we need to trust categories. Like Cognac says you have to make it a certain way. And that's really hard to make a bad Cognac because you have to follow the rules. And so there's only good to great Cognac, in my opinion. And then it's about you deciding which individual brands or which individual maturity levels within that brand that you enjoy more than others. So it's a journey, but at the end of the day, it's like there needs to be a trust built up, and that's how we could get whiskey to a non-age statement territory. But I always think like the non-age statement thing is a funny thing because we said older's better, but what if you like Isla whiskey? Because the really smoky stuff is generally way younger than the rest of it. Like almost every other Scotch single malt out there their lowest offering is 12 years. And Isla's sitting there going, hi, we're 10 years old. We're 10 years old. Ooh, he's 8 over there. It's like, it's crazy, but they want the smoke, not the barrel. And the longer you're in the barrel, the less smoke you have. So it's like they were just quietly sort of forced to do age statements, but at the lowest age they could possibly be and still be acceptable. Still a double digit.
Double figures. They get to double figures and they're like, okay, 10's good. 10's good, loads of phenols. And then they start pushing PPS, phenols per, or ppm, phenols per million.
There's two different ways to, it's funny, even in Scotch, there was Brandon McMillan talked about it years ago to me, and he's like, there's two different ways to gauge them, and different brands will use a different scientific method to gauge their peat parts per million.
Oh, really?
Based on which one makes them look better. Like which one derives the bigger number. Which test do we do well at? Use that one.
Yeah. No, it's a funny thing that, I think I went through the period because I was really into smoky scotches, and I still like one every now and again. But yeah, then you get into your Lafroigs and your Lagavulins, and I really like a Caolila, which is like a much softer, more floral one, a bit more complex. And then you start looking at the smokier Scotch, and you look at Octomore, and it's like, and then it starts talking about is it ppm? I'm forgetting the name now.
I think it's ppm.
ppm, yeah. And you start looking at that, and it's like, then you realize, there's like a culture here where people just want the biggest number there. They just want what is the most smoky.
Well, it's funny though, because I've heard this argument, and it's I'm a big fan of the smoky stuff and Cognac, but on the southern strip of Islay, you have Lagavulin, Lafroig, and Ardbeg all in a row. They're like 30-minute walk from each other, 30 minutes from one to the next in total, like 15 minutes from each other. And of them, everybody would say Ardbeg and Lafroig are smokier than Lagavulin. And yet, if you break it down by ppm, if that's even the correct title, I'm a Cognac guy, I believe Lagavulin has the higher ppm than both the other two, but the core offering from Lagavulin is 16 years old. So by being 16 years, you have more barrel influence, which lowers the taste of the smoke, perception of the smoke, and therefore Ardbeg and Lafroig both seem smokier, one in a more mesquite way with Ardbeg and one in a more medicinal way in Lafroig. And yet, by the numbers, Lagavulin would be more. And so if you're just basing it on the numbers and not actually tasting them, you would go to Lagavulin. But if you wanted the actual flavor of the peat, you might go to Ardbeg or Lafroig,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't know that by just breaking down the numbers. So the numbers fail us. It's not what it means.
Yeah.
But it's something that somebody reached out to and said, "Oh yeah." But it's like, how is it?
The problem is
There's thousands of other influential factors.
Yeah.
And like, where did you get your peat from? Do we want to go down this rabbit hole? Like, we could go.
Because when people get geeky on a subject, they want objective truths, right? Because there's so many subjective comparisons going on that they can't split between the two. Like, I might tell you that fact and say, like, well, I think this is smoky. And it's like, well, someone might disagree with you. So can we have some like science in here, please, to like tell me
but then the
final
science
truth.
comes to like, okay, well, does the height of your still matter? Like how far the vapor needs to travel, does that matter? Like, does the peat actually get to the end liquid?
Yeah.
Or did it get trapped in the, the reflux in the still?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how far are we going to go down that rabbit hole as well? It's
reflux is a massive
like
rabbit
how
hole.
many times are we going to add another, like as soon as we get to an agreement on one thing, there's going to be another variant we can throw in and just be like, okay, well. I think the best thing I heard early on in my life with Hennessy was, Benoit is our master of barrels. So buying new barrels, managing our cellars, everything. And I came in with all these nerdy questions. And he said at one point, Jordan, it's not about specifics. It's about generalities. And we need to know, in general, what that, if we're using Isla as the example, what the peat does in general and what our still does in general, what that taller still over there or that shorter still over there does in general, and then we can make a stylistic choice. Because I think famously, I believe it was Lagavulin, somebody like yell at me in comments about it, but great timing.
Perfect timing. Thank you, sir.
I believe it was Lagavulin. At one point, Lafroig was like super, not that it isn't anymore, but like for whatever reason, Lagavulin wanted to recreate Lafroig. They rebuilt, if I'm not mistaken, they rebuilt the Lafroig like still house, and they're 15 minutes down the road and they couldn't recreate Lafroig. So there's still things we don't understand that are going on.
But I think they were the same company at some point and they split apart. No?
And we can't duplicate. So yeah, it's there's still a little bit of magic. That we don't quite get.
Yeah, I think specifics is the precursor to generalities. Like everyone goes through this period in their career, and it's like you like really get hooked. Like, give me the facts and the numbers and like what exactly happened, and then like you say, like I think you have to get to a certain point where you're like, yeah, all of that is important. It's good to know it all, and then it's good to realize that it could all change. Half of it could be bullshit. A lot of it can be disproven. A lot of it can be perspective. Even things like ppm can be done and measured in different ways. All of these things can be so different.
We have to just trust the experts, and we call it, like in Cognac, we call it savoir-faire. And the savoir-faire is the love of doing. And so it's like the experts have a love of doing, and they love the process, and they take pride in it. And those are the people you want in charge of the generalities, because they're going to get a great product every time.
This is banging, by the way.
Speaking of great products, this is we call it the extra old fashioned, because it is an Hennessy XO, 60 ml.
Has it got some chocolate in there, or am I just getting that from...
You're getting that from the... so we talked about the first drink being honey and a natural sugar, bringing out the floral bright side because honey and bee pollen and whatnot. In this case, we're using maple syrup, not because I'm Canadian, but because as a natural sugar, coming from the hardwood of a maple tree, it's going to bring out the oak notes and those barrel notes. And Hennessy XO is new oak. In many cases, it's a really big, bold, powerful cognac. And so by using just 5 ml, a teaspoon of maple syrup in basically an old-fashioned build, except it's 5 ml, not half an ounce or 15 ml of syrup. It's 5 ml, a teaspoon of pure maple syrup, 60 ml Hennessy XO, a couple drops of saline solution, as you know, why not? And then 2 dashes of Angostura bitters with an orange twist is, I think, an incredible drink. And the maple syrup brings out the oakiness that's already in XO. Now, if you had a more floral XO, maybe you do this with honey and it brings out those qualities. But in this case, I think the maple syrup works well. And, you know, I'm Canadian, so.
Cheers to being Canadian, man.
Cheers.
It's quite it's quite pronounced. You know, like I don't know if it's the maple syrup doing it. I know XO has quite pronounced chocolate notes as well. But like I would, if you told me there was like cacao infused in there, I would be like, yeah, I can taste it.
Well, it's you know? For me, it's what I love about this drink is if you're going to make an XO cocktail, like I think, in my opinion, I don't want XO or a drink of a spirit of that caliber going in a sour.
Yeah.
I think VSOP and VS make great sours. I think if you put XO in my opinion, you're just raising the price of the drink for no added value to the actual drink. Like I would challenge you to tell me there's an XO sour is better than a VS or a VSOP sour. Because I think in a sour, you're looking for the core elements of the base spirit. And I think both VS and VSOP have different but similar core elements that are going to make a great drink, that XO is only adding price to that equation. Where if you're using an older base spirit or a more expensive base spirit, and price is not the same as quality, but in this case, let's say a higher quality base spirit that has a higher price tag attached to it, I think in general, the consumer wants to taste that spirit. And if you're just looking to raise the price, then maybe you're taking advantage of them. And I like, when you're using such a complex aged spirit, what I like is minimalism when it comes to the drink, where, you know, you can add. If I look at, you know, an old fashioned is already minimalistic in the amount of ingredients and it's really based on that base spirit. But here I even lowered the sugar even more, because then I looked at like, what's the least amount of ingredient I can add to get the effect of that ingredient, but still highlight the base. And that was a teaspoon for me.
Yeah. What's your, I'm going complete side street now because you're a Canadian. What's your opinion? What would you have strong opinions about maple syrup? Like what's So tell me what's
it's got to come from a maple tree. Like
this is my
you
point,
can't
right?
you can't take corn syrup and flavor it. That's not maple syrup. That's corn syrup that's flavored.
Yeah. Well, I know this would happen in the US, and I'm sure in Europe it's more likely that it's not corn syrup, but they do water it down with sugar syrup, much like they do with honey from many countries. You know, it's very, very difficult to get pure honey, just like it's difficult to get real pure maple syrup. And I think I've even watched a documentary about
85% of, if I'm not mistaken, 85% of the world's maple syrup comes from Canada.
Yeah.
I think the rest of it, most of the rest of it is from Vermont.
Okay, yeah, I was actually surprised that it was only 85. I thought like literally 100% of it.
No, it's funny because in the traveling as the U.S. National Ambassador for many years, I had a couple drinks with maple syrup in them simply because it adds that oak note, so it's really nice. And I would ask for maple syrup in the market, and somebody would go to Whole Foods and get a maple syrup, and the maple syrup from Whole Foods on the label says Canadian and Vermont. And I was like, what is this, like a line of trees, like right on the border? Like how are we getting this? Like, what is the reason that it's not just from one place? I suspect, you know, now that it's likely about some sort of like trade by being from Vermont, you avoid some sort of import tax as well. Yeah. Perhaps. So it's interesting in that way, but maple syrup to me is a wonderful ingredient. I believe if you look it up, I just saw something the other day from some like health, you know, person that something about the sugar in maple syrup is quite good for us. There's a lot of mineral qualities to it, and it helped, I think, do not quote me on this, but I think there's something about it now that they found in a study that maple syrup may change the way your body digests other sugars. So if you have maple syrup in, let's say, your morning coffee, it might be better for your the rest of your day's intake of sugar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I could be completely wrong. I'm not.
No, I mean,
I work for Hennessy. I do not work for the Canadian maple industry.
all right, you don't all work for the. I thought you all had a job with the Canadian maple industry. Like,
No, we have to
From
sing
birth.
we have to do a shot of maple syrup, sing the anthem every year to renew our passport.
okay, cool. Yeah, like, yeah. So I think I mean that makes sense, right? Like it's a more complex sugar, much like agave is. So I'm rationalizing here, but like, yeah, drinking a more complex sugar means your body breaks it down in a different way and is also ready for different levels of carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are very complicated. And drinking, like corn, what do they call it? High fructose corn syrup that they have, like, so prevalent in the US, is for sure worse than straight sugar syrup, which is worse than honey, which is maybe worse than maple syrup. So there's levels to this. So
Neither Gavin nor I are food scientists, to be clear.
I am a food scientist. No, but I'll stand behind any statement I make up on the spot. No, but just my advice to anyone pretty much anywhere in the world is, like, when you look at a label for maple syrup, honey, or agave syrup, the strong likelihood is that, if it's not quite expensive, it's probably not a 100% of that product, especially honey and especially maple syrup outside of Canada. I'm sure in Canada it's probably easier.
I
to get
think
100%.
there's rules in Canada around it. I'm not really sure on that. I should look that up.
Once it gets here, though, like where we are in Spain right now, like, maple syrup is probably 20% maple syrup and the rest sugar syrup, and then some flavorings to make it seem more like it was when it started as maple syrup. And honey is even worse. Some honeys are 5% honey. It's madness.
That's gross.
So so those health benefits are great, but only if they're the real thing. I think, like, one of my thoughts as you were talking before is like a question I had in my head for a little while. Why does Cognac not focus on vintages the same way Armagnac does? Because something I noticed when I was in Armagnac is, like, they're very geared more towards vintages, which is harvest years. For anyone who doesn't understand vintages, like, the year that it was made is like, oh, that's a good year. It was a good season that year, so we made great grapes, and therefore we made a great Armagnac. And so this is the vintage from that year. You don't see that much, or at all, maybe in Cognac.
Yeah, the simple answer is Cognac is about a blend, and we want consistency there.
Yeah.
But the more complicated answer would be that there is an age control system where the oldest legal, oldest recorded ages of Cognac is 14 years. So XXO, minimum age 14. So the controlling body in Cognac stops checking age after 14 years, because after 14 years, you can be any Cognac label you want at that point. So after that year, you can sort of do what you want, and it's up to individual brands. You have to trust the brands that, oh yeah, it's older or whatever. They're just aging to get quality eau de vie to make, like, RXO is a different flavor profile to another XO. That's RXO. There's a minimum age, but every XO goes well beyond that minimum age until they get to the flavor profile they want.
Yeah.
So if you were going to do a vintage, you would need the controlling body, the BNIC, Bureau National Interprofessional de Cognac. It's kind of like launching the nukes. They would have to have a key to your cellar, and you have a key to your cellar, and you both can't go in without the other. And they would put a wax seal over the bung on your barrel that only they can break. And so you would need them there every time you were going to open that barrel to test that eau de vie, to do whatever. And for an operation for us at Hennessy, that's just, we would need somebody from the BNAC, like, living on campus.
Yeah.
It's
a bureaucratic ball ache.
Yeah. So it's there are cognac houses that do it, but they might have like one cellar that they devote to it, or one cellar as a cognac house. And it's, for us, it's interesting, but it's not necessarily what cognac's all about. And we find far more interest in making unique blends out of multiple years, and being inspired by a flavor profile we might taste in one eau de vie over another, than just to do single barrels, because the vintage is, it's interesting, but it's not, that's just maturing. So you're going to get a really good eau de vie, great, but you can't duplicate it again. So like,
you can't
why?
build a brand off that.
It's interesting, but like, it's not enough to be interesting in a way. Like, we can have one-off blends that exist in one moment. There was one blend ever made of them, and it's more the expertise of a master blender versus like the master blender, and the blend is the art form to Hennessy.
Yeah.
It's not the aging of the barrel, because that just happens.
Could you also say that it happens more in wine, perhaps, because there's much bigger varieties in wine from season to season, because the grapes are going directly, you're literally fermenting and putting it straight in the bottle, and then you're maybe bottle aging it, or maybe if it's oaked, it's going into a barrel for a certain amount of time, but that season is mattering so much more because it is just coming from one vineyard, whereas you have so many tools to play with that you can create consistency. So there's not really a danger of you not being able to create Hennessy VS next year. You are going to be able to create it. It just might be a different recipe the following year. So maybe vintages aren't required for what you do.
Yeah, I think vintages, they get their own hype because they're interesting, because we get to see a singular flavor from a singular point in time. But for us, a vintage is, it's not as interesting because we haven't, like, the challenge is creating an interesting blend, and like a vintage is just, it's like almost to the finish line, but not there, because you've got like a wonderful eau de vie, but we could have a ton of wonderful eau de vie, but the challenge would be to create the same flavor profile out of different things over and over again. And I think Jan Fidu retired, our 7th generation master blender. He retired in 2017 after 50 years with the company. And he was asked what his most proud moment was. And he said, growing Hennessy VS to double the size that it was when he started while maintaining the same quality. Because in a young cognac, that's very difficult to do, because you have a less range of age to, like if you had 3 dry years, well, that's, 40% of the years involved. Like that's a problem. And this is a gentleman that created Richard Hennessy, which is up to 200 years old and is like one of the singularly oldest spirits on the planet. He created that, and yet he's more proud about doubling the size of VS production because of the technical expertise to blend something to make it taste the same with like a limited range of ages. And I think that's interesting. So like vintages can be interesting, but like
the car builder being proud of the engine instead of the wheels or something, right?
You're proud of, like, if you got into cognac because you liked one vintage, well, we've lost you because there's a limited supply of that. We're never going to get you again. If you love, like, quite frustratingly, my wife's favorite scotch is Ardbeg, a limited edition Ardbeg from like 13 years ago. I was like,
Ardbeg, is that what it's called?
Yeah. Okay. And I was like, great. We're never going to get that again. But so I think it's limiting in what it can do. Yes, it's interesting. Yes, it's fun. But I think we focus on the blend and the potency of flavor that we can get from the blend. Because one eau de vie, in that world of vintages, one eau de vie that might have a distinctly beautiful like black pepper note is useless because it really leans heavy that direction.
Yeah.
But if you take another eau de vie that's really beautifully fruity and more complex, and then you add that pepper note, maybe you get something like Hennessy XO. But without the two, they're not going to have both ends of that flavor spectrum within the same ODV. And yet within the blend, you can create that range.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit like base spirit versus cocktail, greater than the sum of their parts.
Yeah. No. That's a fair point. And actually, like, as you were talking, I was trying to think, like, can I think of brands that create great vintages? I mean, aside from wine, there's some wines that create great vintages and they do it year on year.
Hein does some.
Hein do some?
Yeah, they focus, if I'm not mistaken, they focus on a singular field for a singular year, and they've got a couple of them that they brought out. They're quite good.
Okay. That's interesting. But it's definitely it's a difficult road to build a customer base and say,
it's a unique
we're here,
thing.
this is what we do, and you can trust us to create this thing that you love, especially within a delicate range, because people might like this VS but not this VS over here, and it's like, well, they're very similar actually, but like this is just a little bit fruitier or whatever. Yeah, so it would be quite hard to create vintages like that. And
it's an interesting side.
Yeah.
But it's like similar to barrel finishing.
Mm-hmm.
Can cognac be barrel finished? Yes, as long as it doesn't go in a whiskey barrel. You could technically finish cognac in any sort of grape barrel, but like sherry finishing is a Scotch thing. And Jan Filiu, and is echoed by Renaud Filiu, our 8th generation master blender, says like, well, that's a Scotch thing. Like, if we all start aging or finishing our spirits in sherry, then we all start to taste a little bit more like sherry. And that destroys the uniqueness of an entire back bar of different things. If we all start just being sherry finished, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I agree with him in that place. Like he says, like we have enough uniqueness and areas to play within the terroir of our individual fields, and the flavor profiles there intrigue us enough that we don't need to finish in something else to add that. And that's not, by no means is that a shot at Scotch. It's something that Scotch took as their own, and other whiskeys and rums and other things have followed because it was so successful. But in the cognac world, we don't personally believe. Now, maybe another cognac house wants to travel down that road, but for us, we find enough interest. And that's the beautiful thing about the category, about the world of spirits, that there's going to be different flavor profiles out there. And this is why people like to play around and try different things. Like, hopefully Hennessy is in your wheelhouse, maybe after listening to this or listening to some other time I've preached about it. But there's enough flavor differences out there, and really we should be looking for quality. And then there's a lot of different flavors. Like, I love steak. There's a lot of different places that make steak slightly differently, and they're all intriguing to me.
Yeah. But Scotch, I mean, like if you think about the finishing, this is also a logistical thing, right? Like the French cognac industry uses barrels from French forests, whereas
at
Scotch,
3 times the cost of a American white oak barrel.
of course. Of course. They have to like physically cut down fresh trees, whereas Scotland are just like, hey, you done with that bourbon? And send it over here. Which they didn't always do, because sherry at one point was maybe way more popular, maybe not more popular than bourbon. Or I suppose it was more popular than bourbon at some point. So there was a lot more
Certainly
Scotch.
closer. Yeah,
it was way closer. So Scotch was going into more sherry casks than it was bourbon casks, and then bourbon got more popular, so now it goes into more bourbon casks. So there's definitely an economic, and that's why we get sherry finishes, because it's like, okay, well, we're going to do the bulk of the aging in bourbon casks and then finish it in sherry so that we can use that same sherry cask for like 15 different batches rather than 7 and throw the barrel away or whatever.
The need for sherry cask finish, as I understand it, has far surpassed the amount of sherry being drunk.
Yeah.
So like, there's so much sherry that's just
so
like poured down the drain at this point.
Well, it's like table sherry, cooking sherry, or poured
Not
down the
even
drain.
that can
not even that
keep up.
Exactly.
As I understand it, there are many whiskey houses that now,
and it's a shame,
buy the barrels new, send them to Jerez, get sherry put in them, and then ship them back.
Yeah.
And that sherry never sees the light of day, because it is just used for that purpose alone. So the sherry industry is like, or the Scotch industry is propping up the sherry industry at this point.
Yeah. So if someone could figure out how to make sherry popular, they could make sherry for free essentially and have a 100% profit margin.
Yeah.
Because you can just get Scotch to pay for everything. Like, hey, we'll make sherry for you. All you have to do is buy us
the barrels,
the vineyard,
buy us the barrels, buy us the vineyard.
yeah.
We'll bottle it though.
Yeah. We'll brand it and we'll get a marketing team together. Yeah, they should just do that. Like what? Okay. Business idea? Let's do it.
Can we cut this out of the show?
No,
so no one takes this idea. Yeah.
Our sherry business idea. Let's finish off because we've had a few drinks now. So let's finish off by casting some shade on other brandies. How do you feel about Pisco?
It's not aged. What are they doing? No, nice. I think other brandies are, as we said at the very beginning, like brandy is about generally grapes, but if not fruit. It's highly subjective to terroir. So you cannot duplicate Cognac anywhere in the world the same way you can't duplicate Pisco anywhere in the world, the same way you can't duplicate Spanish brandy anywhere in the world. Like, it is highly subjective to the terroir, and therefore up to your own likes and dislikes. I think the one thing that we can see within the Pisco world is like aged Pisco is not traditional.
No.
They only started aging it because Cognac and other aged brandies were really popular around the world. But, I say that to drink Pisco unaged is the traditional way to do it. And many, their grapes and their terroir and their distillation techniques all lean towards that.
Yep.
The same way that Cognac is aged. And therefore, if you drink a raw eau de vie from Cognac, it's not going to be as good as that Pisco.
No.
Because it was not designed to be drank that way. We distill to age it.
Yeah.
And therefore, everything fits into that.
What would you say the difference is there, just for people's interest? Because I think it's interesting to know, like what does it mean when you say, like, okay, we've created this eau de vie to be aged, and therefore it won't taste as good as a Pisco. So what does an eau de vie for Cognac taste like before it's aged?
It's quite tart, bitter, mineral forward. And as it ages, kind of like a young wine, it's going to, the acidity is going to come down and the fruit's going to come up. And then you're obviously going to add some spice and caramel or vanilla from the barrel coming out. And all of those are going to come together to create something where the fruit comes out, where the floral comes out, where it's all it's rounded. It's quite harsh at the beginning, and then it gets rounded like a young wine that might take some time to reach maturity. There's wine that also is great to drink, the moment it's done. And others that take time to mature. And so ours takes time to mature in barrels because over time it was designed that way. Now, maybe eau de vie from 300 years ago might have been way better by itself because it was distilled that way or created in a way to make like that white wine concentrate, and aging came as a happy accident later. But over time it's been evolved to kind of match that.
Yeah. Okay. And as I understand it, I mean, the greater the aging potential for the eau de vie, the more out of line it's going to be
at the beginning
with our flavor profile, with an acceptable flavor profile. So like if you're like planning to age something for 10 plus years, when you drink it as an eau de vie, it's going to be rough because it needs to have strength and sharpness to be able to handle 10, 15, 20 plus years.
Yeah, it's going to be hidden in a way. And like we have a tasting committee led by our master blender, 8th generation master blender, tasting committee that meets every day between Monday to Friday, between 11 to 1. They're going to taste between 40 and 100 eau de vie a day. During the distillation periods of the year, they're going to be drinking. Yeah, well, they do other stuff in the day, but they're each an expert in their own area. So like Benoit, our master of barrels, is on the tasting committee.
Yeah.
Our director of distillation is on the tasting committee. Our master blender, our head vintner, all of them on the tasting committee. So they each bring a expertise on Cognac to the table, but they also are prized for their palates. And they're not tasting for individual flavor profiles. They're just tasting for quality.
Yeah.
Is it quality? If it's quality to represent Hennessy, what attributes does it have that might indicate what barrel we started in? big fruit power eau de vie, maybe that goes in new oak. Light floral bright, maybe new oak would destroy that, so it goes in a more neutral barrel. And then over the course of the rest of the year, they're tasting our aging stock to determine, like, if that first hypothesis, how that's going. Does it have enough spice? Should it come out of that new oak barrel and go in a more seasoned barrel? Like, where's the journey? Where's the maturity journey of this eau de vie taking it? And how can we better allow it to reach that? And that's only done through experience. So that tasting committee, it takes 10 years to get on that committee. You start on the committee, but you're training. So you don't get to really speak in that room because your opinion doesn't matter. You don't know what you're talking about yet. But after 10 years of tasting, you've tasted 100,000 eau de vie. You now have a palate that really understands eau de vie and understands what Hennessy is looking for. And therefore, your opinion now matters. You're a senior member of the tasting committee and you can speak.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this, actually. It's like 10 years of tasting and not speaking.
Yeah.
And then after 10 years, you get to talk now.
Yeah. Olivier, our director of distillation, he tells a great joke every time I'm there with people. He's like, Jordan has a great palate. He could definitely be on this committee, but he can't shut up for 10 years, so he can't.
Nice. I think that's a great point to end on, man. Like let's leave it there. Thanks
Brilliant.
so much, Jordan.
Thanks,
love you,
Gavin.
man.
Love you, brother.
Love spending time with you. Amazing. Thank you. Cheers, you, brother.
Cheers. Yeah.
Silver.
You're empty.
Yeah.